Hello and welcome to the channel. As always, like the video, and if you enjoyed the story, leave a comment on if you would want more. This fan fiction was not created by me, but in the description there is a link to the fanfic so you can show your support to the creator and read along. Without any more delay, let's dive into the story.
People aren't born equal. This is the greatest truth of this world, when I learned when I was 4. People aren't born equal, and so those who are strong are granted the right to lord over those weaker than they are. This isn't right, but this is the rule of the world. I know it all too well. In a world where 80% of the population has a particular power, at Quirk, I am one of the 20% born powerless. Quirkless. That's what they call me, and none do it louder than Katsuki Bikugo Koch-chan, as I call him. His quirk lets him produce explosions at will, and he is good with it. Because his quirk is strong and versatile, people shower him with praise, and keep telling him how great he is. And Bikugo revels in it. He believes himself superior to everyone else, and plans to become a hero. Foolish Koch-chan, you don't become a hero through sheer strength. You need the heart of one too, a heart full of kindness to rescue people and keep them safe, and your heart is the very opposite of kind. You won't become a hero, not like that. What about me? Well, I too want to become a hero. But how does one become a hero without a quirk? That question keeps making me laugh. Quirkless doesn't mean powerless, far from it. And besides, I discovered a way to even the playing field. Do you see this card in my hand? No, it isn't made of bone. It is made of turtle shell. Not exactly the same, but still close enough. Anyway, this card depicts a lady taming a lion. In the major arcana, this card is called strength and represents, among others, self-control, mastery and confidence, but also misuse, violence and conservatism. Now, watch carefully. Palinapi, yep, that's an energy blade that appeared. This, you see, is called cardinal magic, and I have spent the past year mastering it. Don't ask me where I found out about it. This is a secret I save only for my friends. But yes, I can use magic. So, even though I am quirkless, I am anything but powerless. Sure, cardinal magic is a bit tricky to use, but that's why I enjoy it. You never know what you'll draw next, so you have to stay on your toes and make plans on the spot. Fun. I read once that magic is the art of telling reality how to behave. Reality told me being quirkless meant I am weak and harmless, and I have no power on my own. I am going to use magic to tell reality to shove it and become a hero as well, when he rescues others. Because there are people like me out there who have no power and no one to help them, and I know all too well what it's like. I would let them go through the same hardships I did. It was pure coincidence that he stumbled upon the book. Looking for some peace and to change his mind from the hell that was school, Izuku had gone to the library bookstore and searched a good book in the fantasy section. He had found a worn volume with a blue and gold cover that didn't have a title. Out of curiosity, he had opened it and started reading, wondering what kind of adventure he would get in. It wasn't a story he found. It was a manual on magic. Izuku was strongly tempted to put it back. Those kinds of books tended to be hoaxes, and he had no time to waste on that. But the book was well written, and the descriptions were quite detailed, and he found himself reading one chapter, then another, then another. There are 4 different magical energies and 4 spheres that allow their manipulation. Celestial energy comes from the spaces beyond this world and are best canalized by metal, especially gold. They allow the manipulation of light in space, visualization of the future, and the countering of magical energies among others. Natural energy is the energy generated by Earth's biosphere, and is channeled through vegetation in general and wood in particular. It allows, among other, animal empathy and shape-shifting and the control of the land and the weather. Elemental energy is born of our planet's foundations and is canalized through gems and jewels. Water, fire, earth, wind manipulating them, falls under the abilities granted by this sphere. Finally, ethereal energy comes from the reaches beyond this universe, and is channeled by bone, shell and the likes, resilient biological materials that firmly anchor this energy in our dimension. The abilities granted by this magic can be outright eldritch. Time and darkness, but also necromancy and blood manipulation are among them. Izuku read further and further. Once you have found the sphere you feel most at ease with, there are 7 paths one can choose between. The primal path allows manipulation of the most fundamental aspect of the sphere. The blessed path tends to be the most liked of all, as it focuses on the gentler, more benefic aspects of the sphere, while the arcane path grants much more subtle means. The unseen path focuses on hiding and revealing mysteries, while the emperor path is the path that acts on the widest scale. Finally, the divine path encompasses arts that would be considered by most as holy, for a given definition of the word, while the profane path is the path of arts generally considered darker. Nevertheless, all paths teach skills that are useful in their own way. The book didn't delve in the details of each sphere and their path, but it gave general knowledge and basic rituals that could be performed regardless of a mage's sphere of choice, and gave warnings along. To prepare a room for ritualistic use, first clean it thoroughly with non-aligned detergent and cleaning products or products aligned to the sphere corresponding to the ritual. plant-based soap for natural magic, metal-based detergent for celestial, etc. In a pinch, it is perfectly fine to clean the room to be neutral, then fill it with materials and the proper catalyst in a way that won't hamper the ritual. Examples include gem figures and jewelry. If attempting an elemental ritual, be careful that the metal doesn't channel celestial magic by accident, or games such as dominoes and board pieces carved from shell and bone. The most basic ritual is the ritual of affinity, which allows a potential mage to figure which sphere he is most attuned to. First, clean a room to be neutral. Then draw 5 concentric circles as depicted below. Izuku borrowed the book. As always, the evening was quiet. His mom was always gentle and caring toward him, and he genuinely felt bad for downplaying his bullying. But Inko's friendship with Mitsuki Bakugo was one of the few good things she had going for her, and Izuku didn't want to break it by revealing how much Katsuki hurt him. He kept reading the book late into the night. Though he wasn't done, he didn't bring it to school the next morning. He knew Katsuki. If he ever took the book at school, his bully would ruin it and he couldn't have that. He ruins everything I have, Izuku thought bitterly. School went exactly as usual. People pitied him for his quirklessness, and those who didn't pity him tormented him. However, he wasn't the only target of Bakugo and his gang, merely the most frequent. There were others the blonde tormented. Today, Bakugo and his gang were going after a girl 1 year younger. His quirk let her alter the color of her eyes. A harmless quirk for all intent and purpose. And yet, when Izuku caught the 4 teens cornering the girl, quirks active, something stirred within him. His feet moved, and before he knew it, he was standing between the girl and the bullies. Bakugo scoffed. "Shitty Deku, why do you keep standing in my path? You truly think you can stand up to me?" Izuku grit his teeth. "No, but protecting others is what heroes do." Bakugo outright snarled. "Again with that hero crap. Looks like I'll have to teach you a lesson." Izuku silently gestured to the girl to run. She did. The teen braced himself for the incoming beating. This was going to be a long day. He didn't know how long it went. When you're being pounded into the ground, your mind has other things to do than keeping track of time. One thought kept ringing, however. Fuck this. When he came back home, he made a beeline for the bathroom and nursed his bruises. Then he took the book and ignored homework until he was done reading. In his head, he was making a mental list of the materials required for the ritual of affinity. 1 bag of salt, 1 bag of wood shaving, 1 bag of aluminum dust or some kind of metal shaving, 1 bag of bone powder or shell splinters, 1 gem, 1 flower, 1 metal item, 1 bone item. At the end of the book, safeguarded by robust leather string was a key. His sun-patterned keychain was made of all 4 materials. The keychain was made of varnished ebony lined with ivory, while the sun was made in gold and had a round diamond in the middle. The key was small, no bigger than Izuku's thumb. Yet, as the instructions below indicated, it didn't matter. Joined to this manual is a key to the library. In ages long gone, the strongest archmagi of the era gathered their powers to create a pocket dimension, meant to serve as a repository of all their knowledge. If no teacher is available, a mage in training can use the key to access the library and teach himself. However, it is strongly advised that a proper teacher be found soon enough. All paths provide useful abilities, but some are much riskier than others to walk alone. Examples include the Emperor Path in general, as well as Space, Celestial Arcane, Malediction, Ethereal Profane, Matter, Elemental Prime, and Land Waking, Natural Divine. Izuku nodded and took the key. It fit the keyhole of his room. One twist, and the door opened not on the corridor, but a white room lined with books of all kinds, white windows showing an endless starry sky. It worked. Alright, let's see what's inside. He left a quick word for his mother, took the book and stepped in the library, closing the door behind him. The place was massive. Rows after rows of books were lying on the shelves, going from mahogany floor to a ceiling of white marble that brightened the room, thanks to the light of crystal chandeliers. And that was without accounting for the countless mezzanines layered all over. Izuku quickly stopped trying to make sense of the architecture. It wasn't Escher-esque, but it was close. He had barely made 3 steps that a translucent figure appeared before him. Izuku outright jumped. The figure winced. "My apologies. It has been too long since someone last stepped into the library. I was starting to think we had been forgotten." Izuku blinked. "What are you?" "I am a spirit, a ghost whose memory was wiped clean and granted a single purpose, along with the ability to interact with the physical world through necromantic magic. My purpose is to act as the head librarian of this place. And no, I don't work alone. Hundreds of spirits work with me to maintain the library. You can refer to me as the librarian." Izuku breathed and nodded. "Nice to meet you. So do you know when the last visit was?" "About 2 centuries. The library may be in a pocket dimension, but it is still time-bound to Earth." The teen grimaced, and the book advised against self-teaching. If no one showed in 2 centuries, it means no one's used magic in all this time, so the art is most likely gone, as we feared. The librarian winced. "Well, as your presence shows, no one may practice magic anymore, but the knowledge isn't lost to Earth. What can I help you with, young apprentice?" Izuku shook his head. "I haven't even started yet. I stumbled upon this book yesterday and was wondering how much of it was a hoax. Apparently, none. Now, I need to gather the materials for the ritual of affinity, and I got the feeling it won't be a pleasure cruise. The librarian shrugged. We already have a pre-prepared ritual. It wasn't uncommon, back in the days, that a mage would take a prospective pupil to the library and use the one there. It saved materials. As for its efficiency, don't worry. The entire library was imbued with the time magic, so nothing would rot and decay. It isn't time frozen. It simply rewinds after a while, and the energy fueling all this comes straight from the spheres themselves, canalized and refined through 1,000 processes. Izuku held the urge to ask questions. It all felt incredibly interesting, and the more he heard, the more he wanted to try. The librarian guided him through the mezzanines to the ritual. It was about 2 meters wide, with a middle circle large enough he could stand inside. The first ring was made of salt and had a barrel on the left. The second ring was made of wood chips and had a rose on the nadir. The third ring was made of silver and had a single golden band on the right. Finally, the last ring was made of bone powder and had a rodent skull on the zenith. Careful not to disturb the circles, Izuku went to the middle disc and, instead of taking the needle the librarian handed him, he removed the band-aid on his knee, scraped the scab, and let the blood drop on the salt ring. The next moment, the ritual came alive. The outermost ring shone with a bright, almost blinding purple light. The librarian beamed. Powerful magical potential attuned to the ethereal sphere. Impressive. I know it has been 2 centuries, but still. Other spirits gathered, all with the same amazed expression. The mage. The new mage is there, but he's not even an apprentice. Who cares? Someone is using the library again. Yeah, the light faded. Izuku cracked his knuckles. So, the ethereal sphere. Alright. Which path will I walk? I am not a teacher. The librarian wins. This isn't my purpose. But I can guide you to the knowledge you seek, which is still better than nothing. Indeed. All I have is that book, and it only teaches the basics. I know which paths the ethereal sphere encompasses, but I'd rather have the details before trying anything. A wise decision, especially since you'll walk the path alone. So, Izuku followed the librarian to a mezzanine dimly lit by crystalline night lights. The librarian picked a purple-covered book, The 7 Paths of the Ethereal Sphere. This is what you'll need. Izuku nodded and checked his phone for the time. I know the library is time-cinched with Earth, but I'm a bit afraid I won't see it pass by if I start reading there. Do you mind if I borrow it and read it at home? Not at all. Every book has a borrowing time of 2 weeks. Afterwards, if they are returned, they will instantly teleport back to their shelf, and if they are destroyed, the librarian frowned. The book will be summoned back to the library and restored after a few days, while the guardian spirit will be dispatched to literally kick the culprit in the ass. Izuku was tempted to bring the book to school just so Bakugo would destroy it and get his ass kicked. He shut the thought quickly and left the library. Reluctantly, he got started on homework. Priority, Izuku. You can figure which way you want to magically kick ass after you do your homework. Low grades will get you nowhere. So, he went to work. As soon as he was done, he went for the book and started reading. The 7 paths one can walk through the ethereal sphere are as follow. Primal path. Darkness magic, the ability to harness and control obscurity in the absence of light. Divine path. Cardinal magic, the ability to channel ethereal energy through enchanted bone cards to cast a wide variety of spells. Profane path. Malediction magic, the ability to focus ethereal energy to weaken an opponent and make them suffer. Unseen path. Furtivity magic, the ability to avoid the enemy's perception and go around unnoticed. Temporal path. Necromancy magic, the ability to call upon the souls of the deceased and imbue corpses with ethereal energy to animate them. Blessed path. Blood magic, the ability to command blood for a variety of uses. Blood magic is one of the few paths with 2 branches, offensive and defensive. Offensive blood magic allows the mage to control the blood in others to weaken and harm them. Defensive blood magic relies exclusively on the user's own blood for enhancement and healing of the self and others. Arcane path. Time magic, the ability to alter the flow of time for a variety of uses. Izuku hummed. All paths sounded good, but he wanted to be a hero, so malediction, necromancy and offensive blood magic were out. This left darkness, cardinal, furtivity, defensive blood and time. The self-enhancing abilities of defensive blood magic sounded good. Before this, however, there was a warning below the list. Much as wanting to walk all 7 paths could be tempting, walking a path requires focus and dedication. An apprentice wanting to walk all paths shouldn't attempt to learn them at once, but instead walk one path after the other for efficiency's sake. If, however, they truly want to walk several paths to balance their skills, the most paths advised are 2. Some paths have greater synergy than others, like darkness and furtivity, that allow to cover for their weaknesses. Izuku nodded. 2 paths at most, and try to learn the others once he's done walking them. He went to the chapter on defensive blood magic and started reading. After 5 minutes, his mind was set. People stereotype wizards as squishy because they spend more time reading books than working on their cardio. The enhancements provided by defensive blood magic will make up for that. And they have a point. I need to work out. I'm not gonna be a hero if I got the muscles of a twig. Now, what path to choose next? Defensive blood magic provided healing and self-enhancement, which were a boon in any fight, and allowed the user to get in and out of a brawl with minimum damage. Izuku discarded furtivity. He wasn't out there to hide. He was there to stand between villains and their victims and protect them. Darkness, cardinal or time. Decisions. Darkness sounded good. It provided equal amounts of jamming and firepower by blocking the enemy's view while binding and hurting them. Time was versatile, but Izuku grimaced at the description of the more basic spells. The warning in the blue book jumped to his mind. Some paths were dangerous to walk alone, and time was definitely in that category. Finally, the requirements for cardinal magic were a bit of an issue, but the sheer versatility it provided, from pure firepower to shield, teleportation and many other effects, was what did it for the team. Defensive blood magic for the enhancements and the healing, cardinal magic for the versatility and the firepower. Blast them from afar with my cards, heal the victims, then jump in the fray and kick their ass. Sounds good. His paths were chosen. Now, he needed the tools to walk them. The teen winced. I need a bone scalpel to perform blood magic, and I have to carve it myself. A beef rib should do the job, but I'm going to need special tools to carve it and go find turtle shells to make the cards. Damn it, how am I going to proceed? All of this could wait the next day. After one more ugly day at school, he dropped at the grocery to buy a prime rib, and, for once, made dinner for him and his mother. Inko didn't question when he didn't throw the rib and washed it with the dishes. As soon as they were done, Izuku went to his room and headed to the library with the rib. How's it going, apprentice? I decided to learn cardinal and defensive blood magic. I got a beef rib for the scalpel, but I don't have the tools to carve it or the materials to make the cards. I was wondering what I could find in the library to help me. The librarian shrugged. We have the tools for the crafting, if you were interested, along with an entire storage room of materials. As the centuries went by, some materials became harder to obtain than the others, so the visiting mages made sure the supply room was well stocked. Unfortunately, its contents aren't unlimited. Izuku winced. Better be cautious and not make any waste, though that would be wise. Come on, the crafting room is this way. The librarian took him past the door on the floor level. The crafting room contained a dozen tables with various tools, from jewelers to woodcarver to painter, and even a small forge to melt and shape metals. Izuku went to a table that contained several files, gravers, burins, and an ivory lathe. A spirit handed him a book on blood magic that contained the indications to make the scalpel. It was almost midnight by the time Izuku was done using the tools. The final step was enchanting the scalpel to bind it to him and make it a better catalyst of his magic. The teen used the scalpel to slice his wrist horizontally this way. The book instructed, blood clots would block the veins and staunch the bleeding, and filled a small container meant for this purpose. Then he put the scalpel in it so the tool was completely red, retrieved it after 10 seconds and spoke. I bind this blade and sharpen it through my blood. The language felt positively eldritch in his tongue, but he could feel and see purple energy turn red over his hands and flow over the scalpel. The bone absorbed the blood, and Izuku could feel clearly the tool had become sharper and more resilient. Not only that, according to the book, it was now bound to him. Anyone trying to use it would find its edges dull as a wooden sword. The librarian smiled. The enchantment was successful. Well done. Now, how about you try it? Izuku looked at his hands, magically clean from blood. The cut on his wrist had stopped bleeding, but it wasn't closed. He looked into the book until he found what he sought. Defensive blood magic works by drawing the user's own blood with a magic-imbued bone scalpel and carving on the skin sigils of power, along with lines to channel the spell. The most basic and useful spell is regeneration, which is achieved by carving you and your wound. Other sigils can be used at the mage's discretion to achieve greater effect, but in this particular case, one shouldn't forget to link the sigils to ensure the activation is in the proper order, rather than at random, in order to ensure the sigils work according to the mage's design. Izuku nodded. The cut on his wrist was shallow. He looked at the sigil, a twisted Y whose leg was crossed, and delicately carved it near the wound. He shuddered as he felt magic focus on the sigil, then floated the wound and closed it before his eyes. Elation rose in his chest. The librarian nodded. Congratulations on casting your first spell, magician. Izuku beamed. Now, to make the cards for cardinal magic. 6 months. Izuku looked at his work and breathed. 6 months carving 78 cards, the 22 cards of the major arcana, and the 56 of the minor arcana. Not wanting to rely exclusively on the stored turtle shells, he had worked on his side to obtain at least a dozen through various more or less legal means. Having to dig dumps was never pleasant, and he had to purify the shells afterwards, equally out of superstition, and to get rid of the stench. But the results were there. 78 cards carved from turtle shell, divided into 2 decks, each picture drawn by his hand with colored inks, imbued with drops of his blood for binding and enchanting, each side carefully varnished. The teen felt rightfully proud. After half a year of hard work, it is finally done. Congratulations, magician. Izuku turned to the librarian and beamed. He had taken a black leather belt with 2 pouches for the decks. The cards fit neatly inside. So, when are you going to try them? I have a few places in mind to go beach among them. Unlike blood magic, cardinal magic isn't something I can practice at school. The memory made him wince. Bakugo was still bullying him, but rather than simply taking the pounding, Izuku used it as training. After each beating, he took the bone scalpel he concealed in his shoe and carved UN on his wrist, watching as his bruises magically vanished. Bakugo never noticed, and the team was silently glad for it. The last thing he wanted was for his tormentor to learn about magic. Not only did he not need it, the last thing Izuku wanted was to give the bully a new tool to hurt people. I'll try the cards when I have the time. It's getting pretty late and I have to wake up early tomorrow. Can't afford to skip on my training, indeed. If you want to become a battle mage, you need to train your body as much as your magic. Fortunately, the shelves of the library contain training regimens. Yeah, I wasn't expecting to find that kind of knowledge here. The librarian shrugged. Some mages enjoyed physical prowess as much as they enjoyed spellwork. They wrote books for those who felt the same. Since strength summons an energy blade, I suggest you look into volumes on swordsmanship to make the best of it. Izuku eagerly agreed. He had crafted himself an enchanted bone knife to serve as a multi-purpose tool, but the small blade also made a perfect emergency weapon. He carried it in a sheath in the small of his back. Looking into sword techniques that involve dual wielding, such as Knight Nichi, the Spanish Verdadera Destreza, the Tai Dop Song Mu, and variations of Wing Chun, the team decided to try them and stick to the one he felt most at ease with. Just in case. School went on as usual. Izuku endured the bullying, carving sigils on his wrist after each beating, while carefully calculating when and how to return the favor with extreme prejudice. Gone, the sigil of energy, increased considerably one's physical capacities, and Izuku considered it the sigil he would use most after Yuan. Dawn, the sigil of movement, would also be much required when lines weren't enough. The book has strongly emphasized the importance of directing the magic to optimize its efficiency. There are 21 sigils in the Inachin language, and each has its meaning and power. First is Yuan, the sigil of time. Its meaning is to begin, beginning, new, anew, again, then, when. It is primarily used to start or to renew a process, such as healing or perpetuating an enchantment. Ninth is Gone, the sigil of energy. Its meaning is to energize, enable, ability. It is primarily used to activate and power up inactive enchantments or even machines. It is also possible to invert the sigil to give it a different meaning, namely to grow, increase, more, faster. It is then used mostly to amplify or accelerate whatever it is carved on. 16th is Dawn, the sigil of movement. Its meaning is to move, motion, emotion, motivate, change. It is primarily used to direct a flow of magic, or liquid, of a gauze. As soon as school was over, he headed to Dagoba Beach. If he used Aldera to train blood magic, the shorebound dump was his training ground for cardinal magic and swordsmanship. There, hidden behind the piles of rusting wreckage, he swung sword and knife, combined cards to varying effect, and wrote down strategies and combinations. It felt relaxing, especially after the hell that was school. He had 2 notebooks. One for sigil sequences and the other for card combos. They were decently filled. The 2 pouches were on his waist like the holster of a gun. He looked at the ocean, inhaled and drew. 3 of diamonds and the hangman. The diamond suite made the major arcana act multiple times, as many as the number he drew. The hangman created magical restraints. Of course, there was a formula to say to activate the card. Izuku spoke. Alavanfo, Ainda Prath, in Inachin. 3 tendrils of glowing white energy shot and wrapped themselves around thin air. The boy nodded satisfyingly and put back the cards in their deck to recharge. According to his observations, it took them 5 to 10 seconds to refill their magic. All in all, cardinal magic was relatively simple. He just had to remember which card did what and was activated by which formula, then adapt to the situation. Draws were random. He knew he wouldn't always get what he needed. Izuku didn't care. It just meant he had to adapt. The challenge stirred his mind in a pleasant way. Since when has life ever been easy for me? He drew again. 5 of spades and temperance. The spade suite inverted the effect of the major arcana for the duration of the number. 1 unit meant 1 minute. Temperance generated a water burst. Inverted, it stilled water completely. The teen spoke. Neeks Lita, sacred water. For 5 minutes, the tide stopped and the beach was as quiet as a lakeside. Izuku snickered. Magic is the art of telling reality how to behave. It felt almost intoxicating to have this kind of power at his fingertip. Izuku shook his head and chased the thought away. He wasn't going to be a hero for the power rush, but to save people. Sensei, look. The water is calm. Izuku jumped and summoned a card. Though he could forcefully retrieve a specific arcana from his deck, it was a technique best saved for last resort and desperate situation, as the act broke the magic powering his cards, and forced them to reboot in a way, as soon as the card was used. Izuku had yet to figure out why, but he knew the effect lasted from 10 minutes to a full hour, depending the power unleashed by the arcana. The hermit jumped in his hand. The teen whispered, Urine, IPE, see not. More than invisibility, the card made him unnoticeable to people. They would walk right by him without a glance, ignore brushes or any attempt at interacting. The teen didn't know if it worked on cameras. Now shrouded by the spell, he hurried away from the beach. He didn't know how long he had until the effect faded, but he wasn't about to take chances. As he walked away, he noticed a blonde scarecrow of a man and a blonde teenager with a quick look at the water, puzzled. This isn't natural, the scarecrow man said. Someone is using his quirk. Should we find them, sensei? The teen asked. It is illegal to use quirks without proper authorization. We should find them and politely ask them to stop. Then we'll train. Izuku held a grin. Technically, he wasn't using a quirk. Much as he waited to watch the pair, he decided against it. Best not linger around the crime scene. The next day was a bit more unusual. For starters, as he headed to school, Izuku stopped to watch the fight between a giant villain and a relatively recent pro, Kamui Woods. The boy took his notebook and wrote, pausing to admire the hero. Despite being made of wood, the pro was graceful and agile, turning his arms into vines to swing around and outmaneuver the villain. Then he landed atop the station and branches grew over his arm. Yeah, get him. The teen cheered. That's his special move, Lacquer Chain Prison, Canyon. The branches were halfway there when a giant woman jumped out of nowhere and drop-kicked the villain. There was a beat as she introduced herself. Hello everyone. My name is Mount Lady and this is my grand debut. Naturally, Kamui Woods pestered about kill steal. Izuku, meanwhile, took notes about her quirk. In this day and age, a lot of heroes went by mostly through the power of their quirk. Izuku had no quirk. He had, however, his magic. And, when it came to the art, knowledge was very much power, maybe about spells or the opponent's abilities. That afternoon, their homeroom teacher was going to hand them the printouts for their future life course, before rightfully pointing all of them wanted to become heroes. Izuku closes his eyes and went back to writing in his hero analysis notebook. Sure, his classmates all had nice quirks, and some actually stood a chance, but they weren't just his classmates. They were Bakugo's too. And Izuku knew all too well his bully was as arrogant as he was powerful, which meant a lot. The explosive blonde quickly reminded the class why he was top dog of Aldair. Izuku listened with one ear. This wasn't the first time his bully gave such a speech. Did he use his magic to become top dog? Probably. But he wasn't interested. His magic was meant to protect others, not lord over them. To use it for such purpose went against his beliefs. Power, be it quirk or magic, exists to serve man and never to rule over him. Then the teacher looked at him. Now you mention it, Midoriya is also aiming for you, right? The whole class turned to him, and Izuku groaned. Great, he was in trouble. He mentally focused on what sigil he would need when they were done. UN, most likely. This was his go-to sigil when he was hurt. The class laughed and the teen shrugged it off, carefully putting his notebook in his bag. When Bakugo threw an explosion at his desk, he simply rolled on his feet, stared at him in silence and sat back. No need to talk, it would just add fuel to the fire. Except his absence of response angered the blonde. Hey, Deku, answer when I'm asking a question. Do you truly think you can put yourself on the same level as me? You don't even have a quirk. True, but I got magic. Izuku held a wince as Bakugo held his shoulder and made a small explosion. And it was. I could end you, Koch-chan. With blood magic, I could enhance myself to shrug off whatever you throw my way. With cardinal magic, I could blast you from afar. But I won't. You have potential. If you become nicer, between your skills and your quirk, you would make an amazing hero. I don't want to ruin you. Almost every night, I pray you won't push me this far. No matter how Bakugo tried, Izuku refused to answer. He endured. Eventually, the teacher called them back to their seat. The afternoon rolled. As they packed their things, Bakugo suddenly snatched Izuku's notebook and blew it before throwing it by the window. To teach him a lesson. Izuku glared but didn't speak. Dawn and Yuen, written in blood and bound by a spiral. Move back to the beginning, to restore something back to its original shape. I don't get to use that formula often. Then the explosive blonde spoke. If you believe you'll get a quirk in your next life, why don't you take a swan dive off the roof? Izuku froze. His earlier thoughts came back. Don't. Izuku, don't. Your magic is meant to help and defend others, not hurt them. Do not answer. Do not fight back. Ignore him. Oh, fuck this. You know what, Koch-chan? You're not worthy of being a hero. You are way too much of an asshole. Bakugo and his cronies froze. Did Deku just swear? Izuku looked at his tormentor, and there was nothing but cold fury in his eyes. The green-haired teen walked to him. A hero's first duty is to protect people. But you don't protect people. You hurt them. That's why you will never be a hero. Have a bad day and roll on the entrance exam. Bakugo raised a hand, sparks announcing an explosion. Izuku was faster. His bow knife flew in his hand as he held the bully's face. The knife found itself on his jugular. One move and they'll cut your jugular. You will die quickly. Koch-chan, please, don't make me do it. Just because I can kill you doesn't mean I want to. Bakugo gulped and moved his hands in his back. Izuku retreated and left the room. The blonde shuddered as he rubbed his neck. When did Deku grow that backbone? The notebook had landed in the Quirk pond. Izuku cut his index and drew the two sigils before connecting them with a spiral. The magic set to work, rewinding the book back to its undamaged shape. The teen nodded. As I thought, damn it, Koch-chan, what got to you? I could have killed you, you moron. Why did you push me this far? He walked home, his head low. There was bitterness on his tongue and regret in his heart. His only silver lining was the prospect of training Cardinal Magic at Dagoba Beach. The thought made him smile. The art was fun because he never knew what he'd draw next. Then a sludge man jumped from a manhole behind him. Well, what do we got here? A medium-sized disguise. The sludge engulfed him. Izuku reacted swiftly, jamming his bone knife in the villain's eye. The villain shrieked and jumped away as the teen coughed. The pair glared at each other. His body is almost entirely made of sludge. A knife would work, but my cards will. The villain snarled. What was that? You're armed. No matter. A puny knife won't stop me. No, but this will. The teen drew two cards. The devil and two of hearts. The devil made a flame burst. The heart suite amplified the effect of the card. Izuku spoke. Barbara Purgil, awaken fire. The fire tongue was nothing compared to Endeavor's attacks, but it didn't have to be. They were in a tunnel, and Izuku wasn't out to seriously injure the villain, merely force him to run or surrender. The flames did their job just fine. The sludge man screamed as his body dried. No, it hurt, then run. Or else, I am here. The blonde colossus jumped from the manhole and stepped beside Izuku. The villain looked at him. You again? Oh no. Oh, no, I'm done for. Run away. Texas smash. The wind pressure splattered him all over the tunnel. Izuku would have questioned the pros and cons of the move if he wasn't busy gushing over the fact the man next to him was All Might. As it was, he simply sputtered in awe. By the time his brain was done rebooting, the symbol of peace was done putting the sludge man in a bottle. And done. Are you alright, my boy? You look out there. So sorry, sir. Just wrapping my mind around the fact my greatest idol just helped me. You were amazing. All Might laughed, deep and booming. You're welcome. Glad to see you were unhurt. I jabbed my knife in his eye when he tried to kill me. Izuku picked his bone knife and sheathed it. I may be quirkless, but I'm not harmless. There was a smidge of pride in his voice. All Might raised a brow. Quirkless. People like you are rare these days. Bursting his eye was a bit extreme, but given he was trying to kill you, you get a pass. Good job. Izuku blushed deeply before looking at his cards. Sure, the pro hero was the symbol of peace, but could he actually tell him about magic? In the wrong hands, the knowledge could be dangerous. All Might took his hero analysis notebook and signed it. The teen gave him a huge smile. Well, it was a pleasure, sir. Smoke rose from All Might's body as he put back the pen. Before either could react, the pro shrank until he was barely more than a scarecrow. Izuku gasped. What is? All Might swore without thinking. My time is decreasing faster than I thought. Izuku acted without thinking. He grabbed his scalpel, took the symbol's arm and drew sigils on it. On, the sigil of energy, but inverted. Na, the sigil of life. Un, the sigil of time. Connect with the line and increase life anew. Regular regeneration won't cut it there. You need something stronger. All Might was too surprised to react. He watched the symbols, the upside-down reversed L with a small line at the bottom, the very curved W and the twisted Y whose leg was crossed. The teen connected the three sigils with a straight line. Immediately, energy seeped into them, and the pro shuddered as he felt his body mend itself. It wasn't much. His wounds were too great, but his body still gained some muscle. His face lost some of its edge, and he could sense his internal organs knitting themselves together, albeit not entirely. He didn't know what the boy had done, but it was better than any healing quirk he had seen before, including recovery girls. Are you feeling better? I do, my boy. What was that? Izuku looked away, considering how to broach the topic. I said I was quirkless, I never said I was powerless. There is a power in this world, but it has been forgotten long ago. I think I'm the only one using it at the moment. The only mage. I don't have a quirk, but I can use magic, and I spent almost a year learning it. There are 4 spheres of magic, and each has 7 paths. I am currently learning cardinal and defensive blood magic, but since I'm the only mage around, I'm self-taught. You're the only one besides Mom I've told about magic. I'm afraid what would happen if the wrong people heard about it. All Might took a moment to digest the teen's revelation. There was magic in this world, honest and genuine. If he hadn't seen the sigils and felt their power, he would have laughed off the revelation. Except the green-haired boy had used magic on him and it had worked. Go refute that. The sigils had already vanished, but he still noticed the 2 cards in his hands. What's your name, my boy? Izuku Midoriya, sir. All Might nodded. Thank you, my boy. Since you shared your secret with me, I believe it's fair that I share my secret with you. He showed his body. 5 years ago, I received a nasty injury that left me convalescent. The multiple surgeries and healing quirks left me like that. Now, my breathing system is damaged, and my stomach is all but gone, and I can only maintain my heroic form for 3 hours, and my time is decreasing day after day. I'll let you see me like this because I underestimated how much time I had left. Izuku winced in sympathy. Defensive blood magic focuses on healing and self-enhancement. To use it, I must carve sigils in my skin, but I read about more complicated rituals. Maybe there's one powerful enough to heal you in full. I'm not sure, though. I'll have to check. All Might smiled earnestly. The sigils you used did more than many healing quirks and surgeries. I am curious to see if there's a ritual that can heal me in full. Come on, I'll walk you home. I'm out of time for today. The villain is safely contained, and you're not as defenseless as you look. As they went to the Midoriya household, the pair talked about the other kind of magic Izuku used, the teen showing his idol the cards he had crafted. All Might, as he introduced himself, Toshinori Yagi was surprised. Do you have a place to train? Yes, to Goba Beach. The scrap piles make for good dummies, and I casted the tides for the more dangerous spells. I have a student and we also train there. Don't worry, he knows my secret as well. He is in second year in UA right now. What do you think about joining us for training after school? Izuku beamed. I was going to head there after I finished homework. It wasn't really a good day for me. I need to blow steam. Toshinori grinned. Meet you there, then, without fail. 8 is NA, the sigil of life. Its meaning is creation, breath, wind. It is primarily used to generate gusts and activate the energies of life to imbue it in a person or living being. As soon as he was done with homework, Izuku ran to Dagoba Beach. Toshinori was here, along the blonde teen with the quiff Izuku had seen once. The scrawny man grinned. My boy, you indeed came. Homework was easy. Besides, after Koch-chan's suicide baited me, I really need to blow steam. The two blondes froze. The elder teen blinked. Someone suicide baited you, yes? Izuku hesitated before taking his bone knife. I put it on his throat and begged him to not make me kill him. He got the message. I hope. Toshinori held his shoulder. Not defenseless indeed. Why would someone do that to you? What's your quirk? Izuku rolled his eyes and turned to Toshinori, who nodded. Young Mario is in on my secret. You can tell him yours. And so, hidden behind the piles of scrap, Izuku told the hero in training about magic, demonstrating the bleeding sigils and drawing 2 cards. He got the chariot and 9 of clubs. The chariot teleported the target. The suite of clubs increased the spell's reach. He used it on Mario and focused to the other side of a scrap pile. I go his parry. You say Aaron. Mario was teleported 9 meters away, on the other side of the pile. The blonde shuddered. That felt weird. Magic has a particular feeling to it. It is, after all, a kind of energy. They spent the next half hour talking about what the cards did. The conversation shifted to Mario's quirk, permeation, and Toshinori decided to reveal another tidbit of knowledge. The nature of his quirk, one for all. Izuku was genuinely surprised to learn there was a quirk out there that could be passed. Nevertheless, he swore himself to secrecy so long as the pair did the same with his magic. Then Mario started training his new quirk. It didn't go well. Izuku turned to the blonde, who was hunched over while holding his arms. Toshinori sent the boy a pleading look. Izuku didn't hesitate, engraving the sigils in Mario's arm. It took a few minutes for the wounds to disappear. I don't get it. The blonde teen winced. I know permeation isn't easy to control, but one for all is even worse. Anytime I focus this power in a limb, it ruins it. How am I supposed to use it if it keeps hurting me like that? Izuku frowned and took his hero analysis notebook. Figuring out quirks was something he was good at. How does permeation work, exactly? Mario explained, Izuku nodding along as he took notes. Then, on another page, he started writing about one for all, and compared the way Mario and Toshinori used it. Something quickly became evident. Using permeation through the whole body is dangerous. Using one for all through a single body part is dangerous. Do the opposite. Spread one for all through the whole body and use permeation on one limb. Mario wanted to smack himself. Stupidly, as the boy kept muttering, he tried the technique, shuddering as golden lightning surrounded his whole body. It was a bit delicate to maintain, but he still managed to move with it. He wisely decided to stick to motions for the time being, going through katas while Izuku kept analyzing. Finally, the boy stopped his mutter. Permeation and one for all work in opposite ways. Permeation requires focus on a single body part, while one for all needs to be spread across the whole body. Their synergy is low because of it. You need to adapt your mindset, something you can only achieve through training. Another issue is that, for all that you have All Might strength, you lack long-range options. Not only that, until you master one for all, you will keep ruining your limbs, which will seriously hamper you in a fight. I suggest ambushes. Hide with permeation, then jump on your opponent and finish them in one blow. Avoid battles of attrition at all cost, and come see me after a fight so I can heal you. Mario nodded. This is excellent advice. Thank you, Midoriya. You're welcome. Toshinori was smiling brightly. I didn't think you were so smart, my boy. Sure, you have to be to teach yourself magic, but this isn't something I was expecting. Well, I am Quirkless. I thought I could compensate somehow by figuring out how quirks work. Mirio rubbed the back of his head. I'm not particularly bright myself. I'm training to predict my opponent's moves to strike where they'll be, because I am blind, mute and deaf when permeation is fully active. But if we're speaking about sheer intelligence, my grades aren't all that. Mine would be if my teachers weren't Quirkless. Izuku grumbled. Mirio gave him a sympathetic look. Well, I think you're smarter than I am. All you need is experience and technique and you'll make a formidable hero. Who knows? The blonde teen winked. Maybe you'll make it to the top 10. Izuku smiled brightly. Mirio nodded. Come on. You showed me how to use my quirk. I'll show you how to fight in return. They trained together until the sky turned pink, the hero in training teaching the quirkless boy how to use his fists. It became a routine. Every day, after school, Izuku hurried through his homework and ran to go to the beach. There, he would help Mirio clear the garbage and work his cardinal magic. Then he would help the blonde get a better hang on his two quirks, while Mirio taught him proper fighting. Indeed, though his control over his quirks was often iffy, his technique was nearly flawless. Izuku learned a lot from him. Those sessions also reminded Mirio of an old saying. Never bring a knife to a gunfight or, in this case, fists to a sword fight. The blonde huffed as Izuku drew strength and 4 of diamonds. Palinapi, Twilight Sword. 4 swords of energy emerged from the card. The green-haired teen grabbed 2, while the others went hovering in his back. Mirio winced. I know how to disarm knives, but swords are a different story. They have greater reach, for one, which meant getting close enough for a disarm was troublesome, and his opponent had 2 more in stores. He decided to opt for the trident through sneak attack, and dived in the ground. Izuku tensed, alert. Mirio appeared in his back. His shadow was the only warning the teen had. Izuku reacted on instinct and threw a kick backward. Mirio narrowly managed to avoid it with permeation. Izuku kept spinning, and Mirio activated permeation again. Unfortunately, his quirk didn't work on energy. The blade of magical energy hit his head with the flat side. He went rolling. Ouch, got me there. Are you alright? A bit stunned, but nothing that requires a sigil. Toshinori nodded appreciatively. In 5 months, Izuku had made amazing progress with his fighting. Mirio, meanwhile, was mastering permeation and one for all at lightning speed. Both developments were the results of the 2 teens teaching each other. Hey. Mirio grinned. How about you become my sidekick after you graduate? Izuku smiled back. Maybe for a few years. Deal. Toshinori chuckled. The pair turned to him. The scarecrow man explained. You two remind me of Mirai, and I am muscular blonde with one for all, and a lean green head with amazing intelligence. It feels like history repeating itself, and that's a good thing. Izuku asked. A very good thing. You both have bright futures ahead of you. Izuku went home in high spirits. It didn't last. Less than a week later, Mirio and Toshinori saw the teen arrive with a deep scowl on his face. The rail thin man prepared to scrap the session. What happened, my boy? It's Koch-chan again. Izuku grumbled. There was that pig-like villain that attacked him the other day, after school. Koch-chan fought him off, long enough for Hawks to swoop in and stop him. Now, that would have been the end of it, except Hawks was impressed by Koch-chan, and offered to recommend him, and Yue Koch-chan agreed. Ever since, he has been insufferable. I had to keep a very low profile and even used the hermit to go unnoticed. Knowing the magical teen was the explosive blonde's primary target, it was no surprise he was sullen. Mirio put a hand on his shoulder. You're not giving up on your dream, right? Not a chance. I will become a hero, with no quirk, but with magic instead. Reality says I can't become a pro without a quirk. I will retort that yes, I very much can. Shall we start? Toshinori briefly considered recommending the green-haired boy. He chose against it. I will join you as a teacher next year. With your authorization, I would tell Principal Nezu about your magic and convince him to let you use your tools during the entrance exam. The knowledge of magic is bound to interest him. Even if you fail the entrance exam, which I doubt, he will still want you in. But I want your approval first. Izuku considered. If there is one person who I would trust with the knowledge of magic, it's Principal Nezu. Besides, keeping the secret of my powers in UA is going to be a bit complicated. If not my classmates, then at least a few teachers are bound to hear about it sooner or later. Best to tell them up front, rather than letting them figure it out by themselves. Understood, my boy. I will do what I can. Izuku handed him the blue-covered book the next day. It was also the day he showed Mirio and Toshinori the library. The librarian welcomed them fondly. I didn't think you would bring more people so soon, magician. I get it, you trust them. I do. We have been teaching each other for the past 5 months. The spirit nodded. Very well. Welcome in the library, visitors. Mirio and Toshinori looked around in awe. With the mezzanines, crystal chandeliers, and rows upon rows of books, the place was a sight to behold. I am not that much of a bookworm, but I feel like I could spend days reading in this place, Mirio admitted. Izuku showed them around. Out of curiosity, both blondes tried the ritual of affinity. Toshinori wasn't completely surprised to see the third ring shine a faint gold. Mirio, meanwhile, watched the first ring shine a soft white. Celestial and elemental, both with a low potential. Mirio shrugged it off. I already got permeation in one for all. No need to add magic on top of that. Toshinori was more disappointed. Being naturally quirkless, he wouldn't have minded learning magic once the embers of one for all were gone. 3 days later, an incident happened. As always, Deku and his cronies were bullying other kids. Izuku gritted his teeth and, after consideration, walked between the two groups. Deku growled. Move out of the way, Deku. No? Izuku said quietly. You moved. Deku snarled. You've grown a backbone, Deku. Someone needs to remind you where you stand. Come on, you extras. Let's start with the shitty nerd. Izuku turned to the kids and mouthed them to run. They obeyed. Then he took the stance Mirio had taught him. Deku swung a fist. Izuku's eyes narrowed. A strong right hook. Predictable. He dodged, grabbed his wrist and delivered a solid punch in the solar plexus. Deku choked and stumbled away. Yubito and Kabago gasped. It did the nerd just floor Deku. Their hesitation lasted only a moment. They ran at Izuku, long fingers and sharp teeth out. Izuku grabbed Yubito's fingers, elbowed him in the stomach and flung him straight in Kabago, who accidentally bit his partner. Both yelped and collapsed on the ground. Izuku turned to Bakugo, who had risen and was glaring mercilessly. Shitty nerd, you will pay for this. Make me. Someone needs a lesson in humility. Yeah, you. What makes a useless quirkless nerd think he can stand to me? I was recommended by fucking Hawks, the number 3 hero. You are nothing, Deku. Izuku grit his teeth. Bakugo lunged. He grabbed both of his wrists and headbutted the blonde before aiming for an uppercut. Bakugo grabbed his wrist and sent an explosion in his stomach. Izuku fell back, glared and removed his uniform jacket. Bakugo did the same, though he didn't miss how the nerd had oddly muscular arms. They lunged again, Izuku weaving around his opponent as he threw punch after punch. Mirio's lessons hadn't fallen into deaf ears. He hit Bakugo in the air, only for the blonde to send an explosion in his own. Izuku grit his teeth and kicked his knee. Bakugo retaliated with an explosion he barely managed to deviate to his side. Both grabbed each other's wrists. Izuku headbutted his rival in the head and was proud to hear it crunch. Bakugo roared, broke free, grabbed his throat and sent a couple of point-blank explosions. Izuku gasped and fell, struggling to breath. This was all the opening the explosive blonde needed to pummel him. He hit and hit and hit again until Izuku was no longer moving. Only then did he walk away. Learn your place, scum. Izuku didn't hear him. He had fallen unconscious. He woke up to a bell ringing. Gritting his teeth, the teen dragged himself away and hid behind a bench. There, he took his bone knife and opened his wrist, leaving the blood flow on the ground. It was for a purpose, though. Bakugo's explosions caused burns that didn't bleed. He couldn't rely on them to obtain the red liquid. Izuku put 2 fingers on the wound, staining them red, and drew 3 sigils in a column, with himself standing below the second. UN at the start. Gone inverted. Increase. NA life. Then he connected them with a spiral and planted his knife in UN, pouring his magic in the setup. Purple and red light started to shine as the ethereal energy seeped through the bone, powered the blood and healed him in full. The ritual of life spiral. Searching for a way to restore all might had driven Izuku to a book about ethereal rituals. This was where he had found it. The full ritual called for the cleansing of a room and its alignment with an ethereal sphere, before drawing a spiral connecting an assortment of sigils, meant to rejuvenate a person at death's doors, all the while chanting sentences in Nachin. A scaled-down variant simply called for a sigil spiral in the user's blood. It was for emergency use only, and All Might would require much more than that, but it was exactly what Izuku needed at the moment. As soon as he was good, he kicked dust over the dried, blackened blood that had lost all magic, and headed to Dagoba Beach. A glance on his phone told him he had missed a bell. Damn Bakugo, he sent a message to his mother, lying he had been too caught in his notebooks to notice the bell, and was heading directly to the beach. To Mirio, he told him he would be late and explain why when he got there. He snatched a snack on the way to shut his grumbling stomach and ran. Mirio and Toshinori were both waiting for him when he got there. The scrawny man breathed in relief. My boy, we were worried. This isn't like you to be late. Sorry. Bakugo was acting worse than usual, and I decided to step between him and his target. He got the drop on me with 2 explosions at the throat and beat me to an inch of my life. Had to use a scale-down ritual to heal myself. He turned to Mirio. On the other hand, before that, I floored his 2 cronies and gave as much as I took. Your lessons really helped, senpai. Bakugo is strong, but he has no technique, and I think I broke his nose when I headbutted him. And I'm pretty sure he didn't like it either when I punched his solar plexus. I use your signature move. Mirio was silently glad his lessons had helped the younger teen to the point he could replicate his style. On the other hand, both blondes were saddened by the beating. Makes me wonder why Hawks even recommended him. Tashinori grumbled. The boy may be strong, but his heart is anything but heroic. Izuku shrugged. People these days only care about strength. If you aren't strong, you are nothing. Bakugo has a powerful quirk, so everyone looks up to him while glossing over his hellish temper. Me. Without a quirk, people barely even look at me, even though you have a keen mind and one of the most selfless hearts I've seen. Mirio sighed. This isn't right. Life isn't fair, senpai. People aren't born equal. I am learning magic to correct that. Toshinori smiled gently. On the other hand, my boy, I talked about you to Nezu. He has written a notice allowing you to use your tools. The book caught his interest. If you cannot enter the hero course, he saved you a spot in support. I'd have to get in UA first. Oh, with your intelligence, the written portion of the exam will be cakewalk. Izuku wanted to believe him. He ended lightly sparing with Mirio to blow steam. A few notes. Since the sludge villain didn't escape All Might, it didn't go after Bakugo and cause the sludge incident. Instead, a different villain attacked Bakugo, who fought him off, was rescued by Hawks and recommended. In canon, Mirio's fighting style is a result of training with Sir Night-Eye. Here, it was Izuku who gave him the idea to make up for One for All's drawbacks. Izuku's lessons are also the reason Mirio progressed so quickly. In turn, Mirio's lessons are the reason Izuku knows how to fight. Why did Bakugo and his goons never find out about magic? Izuku is stealthy. Very much so. And he even got a card, the Hermit, that casts a perception filter on him. Izuku admired his latest creation. The materials were modest to say the least. Hull-bone cuboids no bigger than his thumbnail, covered with a tiny brass disc that had a gem short put on, red and blue colors alternating between each cuboid, all set on a linen string, and closed by a simple metal clasp. All in all, the bracelet was cheap. The only reason Izuku didn't use materials like ivory and gold, and didn't try to carve the rubies and sapphires, was because they were too rare and precious, and he wasn't skilled enough yet. And yet, as Mirio held the bracelet and set it on his wrist, he couldn't help but smile. It's alright. The hard work you put in it makes up for the material's modesty. And besides, there's nothing wrong with humble materials. It's often the intent that makes